The money didn't go through? That single sentence from the bank? Teller made my mind go blank. My hands trembled. I couldn't believe it when they said the 300 million won. I'd saved over 30 years was gone. Outside, the smell of disinfectant and the hum of the subway vents mixed in the air, making it hard to breathe. My life, spent scrubbing floors, hit rock bottom that day. But even from the ground, I decided to find a way to stand again. And now, let me tell you how it all happened. You're listening to Silver Story Tree, where the voices of life's late chapters gently bloom again. Subscribe, like, and turn on the bell to hear more heartfelt stories that grow with time. It happened when I was standing in front of the coffee vending machine. I could hear raindrops trickling down through the subway ventilation shaft. At 4:50 in the morning, as I was pushing my mop across the floor of Songnay Station, I straightened my back for a moment and breathed in the humid air. The scent of bleach rose from the tips of my rubber gloves. Mansok beckoned to me from the supervisor's office. Wondering what was going on, I went in to find him with his laptop open. The office was small, but it was where we had gathered every morning for 15 years. Between the cleaning tools hanging on the wall, Mansok pointed at the laptop screen as if he wanted to show me something. "Honey, look at this. I found a way to invest our retirement money." On the screen was a Zoom meeting titled, Overseas Settlement Consulting. A well-dressed man was showing photos of high-rise apartments in Phnom Penh. That man was Choi Dong-wook. With 300 million won, you can generate a monthly income of 2.5 million won. Cambodia is an opportunity right now. His voice was upbeat. The video showed riverfront night views, new apartment interiors, and smiling Korean couples. Mansuk's eyes sparkled. At that moment, I thought about the floors of this station. We had been cleaning for 15 years. Is it really possible? I asked. Mansok nodded. They say the exchange rate is good these days. And we're retiring next year. What else will we do with that money? Kim Young-ya from the next cleaning team opened the supervisor's office door. She was holding coffee. "Oh, sister, you should be careful with things like that. My cousin was scammed by something similar. Make sure you check the translated land documents properly." I nodded as I took off my rubber gloves. Just then, a KakaoTalk notification sound rang. It was Choi Dong-wook. A file called Contract Sample PDF had arrived. It was a document with a fancy logo and a stamped seal. Mansok said, "We've been cleaning all our lives. It's time to catch some fresh air." On the bus ride home, I gazed out the window. Rain was streaming down the glass. On a billboard at the bus stop, the night view of Phnom Penh's riverside was shining brightly. It seemed to be calling out to us. As soon as I arrived home, I heard the sound of paper being scratched outside the front door. It was registered mail. When I opened the envelope, it was a retirement fund fixed deposit maturity notice. The number 300 million seemed to dance before my eyes. In the evening, my son Jaiho came over. As soon as he heard about our plans, his face hardened. Jaiho said, "Mom, you absolutely shouldn't do this without on-site verification. That's not money you can just give away." Doubts arose in one corner of my mind as well. But Mansuk's eyes had changed. After 15 years of consistently cleaning the station floors, he seemed to see a different landscape now. I lay in bed looking up at the ceiling. My body was tired, but my eyes were wide open. The sound of rain tapped at the window. This sound was similar to the one I heard from the ventilation shaft at Songnay Station. 15 years of time tapped at my memory like water droplets. That night, before falling asleep, I sent a message to Choi Dong-wook. "I'd really like to see the original contract. Would that be possible?" The reply came immediately. "Of course. I'll prepare all the originals for you at tomorrow's presentation." The next morning, I woke up to the sound of the door opening. It was a delivery. When I opened the box, there was a yellow seal set inside. It was a gift from Choi Dong-wook. There was a small card with it. "Congratulations on the first contract of your new life." At that moment, my heart tightened. The seal was shining, but my heart was cloudy like the rainwater. We got off at Gasan Digital Complex Station and looked for the address. At 10 a.m., several people were already gathered in front of the basement conference room. A banner reading, Overseas Settlement Conference, hung at the entrance. Mansok and I wrote our names at the reception desk and went in. The conference room was larger than I expected. About 30 people were seated, and a projector was turned on at the front. Choi Dong-wook took the stage and greeted everyone. Thank you to everyone who attended today. I'd especially like to welcome Ms. Park Soon-ya and Mr. Kim Man-sok from Songnhae Station. I was a bit surprised to hear my name. He remembered us. Being called out in front of everyone made me nervous for no reason. Choi Dong-wook showed a video on the projector. All the properties in this video were filmed yesterday. These are all available for immediate contract. The video showed high-rise apartments overlooking the river, complexes with swimming pools, and brightly smiling Korean couples. Numbers appeared alongside investment amounts, rates of return, monthly income. A woman in the next seat asked, "Is there really a high demand from Koreans?" Choi Dong-wook answered confidently, "It's overflowing. Just last month, 20 households signed contracts. The demand for Korean rentals is exploding." He distributed sample lease contracts. The logo looked legitimate, and the translation certification stamp was thickly imprinted. I examined that stamp carefully. The ink was slightly smudged. "Could I see the original contract?" I asked. Choi Dong-wook smiled and answered, "You can verify all the originals on site. If you sign a contract now, we'll also provide airfare." Mansok held my hand tightly. "Honey, what do you think? Doesn't it sound good?" I hesitated, but seeing Mansok's expectant face, I couldn't bring myself to speak up. I wondered if such an opportunity would come again. For someone who had been cleaning Songnhae Station at dawn for 15 years. After the conference, Choi Dong-wook approached us. "Have you decided? The last flight for next week's departure is filling up." Mansok nodded. "Yes, we've decided. We'll sign the contract." The next day, we went to the bank. The teller handed us a transfer statement. Looking at the recipient name, I saw it was an individual's name, not a company. I hesitated momentarily, but then remembered Choi Dong-wook's explanation. Our local corporate account isn't yet linked to Korea, so we're receiving funds through a representative account. The number 300 million appeared on the transfer confirmation screen. My hand trembled briefly. It was our life savings. But Mansok nodded with confident eyes. I pressed the confirm button. A week later, we boarded a plane at Incheon Airport. On the flight to Phnom Penh, Mansok kept looking out the window. It was a journey away from our daily life, filled with bleach smell and mop sounds. When we arrived at Phnom Penh Airport, hot, humid air greeted us. It was humid, hot, and unfamiliar. A young woman named Yoon Hai-rin was waiting for us at the airport. "Hello, Ms. Park Soon-ya, Mr. Kim Man-sok. I'm Yoon Hai-rin, your local guide. I'll be with you from today." Hai-rin was kind. She drove us into the city. But instead of the promised apartment, she dropped us off at a guest house. "Please rest here today. We'll tour the apartment tomorrow." The guest house was clean, but far from the high-rise apartment we had contracted. I felt a bit anxious, but Mansok seemed to be enjoying the trip. I saw comfort on his face for the first time in a long while. In the evening, Hai-rin took us to a nearby restaurant. It was our first time trying Cambodian food. It was tastier than I expected, but my heart was still uneasy. As we were returning to the guest house after dinner, Hai-rin quietly said to me, "I'm sorry, but this route was exactly the same yesterday." My heart sank. I sensed something odd in Hai-rin's eyes. That night, lying in the guest house room and staring at the ceiling, I thought that I should verify everything with the same meticulousness I used to clean the floors at Songnhae Station. Morning broke. Beyond the window, the noise of an unfamiliar city reached my ears. The sounds of motorcycle horns and market bustle blended together. Mansok was already up, looking out the window. "Honey, it's really lively here. Could we really start a new life here?" His voice was full of anticipation. But Hai-rin's words from yesterday kept circling in my mind. Checking my phone, I saw a text message from Choi Dong-wook. "Today's meeting place has changed. Let's meet in the lobby at 10. After breakfast, while waiting in the lobby, another text came in. Postponed to 11 a.m. And 30 minutes later, yet another message. The location has changed again. Like this, the appointment time and location changed 4 times. Finally, at 2 p.m., we arrived at a building with Hai-rin. Choi Dong-wook greeted us with a smile. Did you wait long? I'm sorry. The apartment I'll show you today is really special. We took the elevator to the 15th floor. Opening the door, we saw a spacious living room. A river was visible through the windows. But soon I noticed something strange. There was no furniture in the room, and no electricity coming from the outlets. It doesn't seem possible to move in yet? I asked. Choi Dong-wook smiled and answered, yes, just a few procedures remain. Once the paperwork is done, it will all be resolved. He took a contract out of his bag. I examined it carefully. The ink on the seal was smudged, and the date format was American, not Korean. And the color of the logo at the top of the contract was subtly different from what I had seen before. Sensing something was wrong, I secretly turned on my phone's recording function. Where is the original of this contract? I asked. Choi Dong-wook hesitated for a moment before answering. The original is in the office storage. I'll show it to you tomorrow. I recorded that statement. Mansok was admiring the view outside the window. But in my heart, doubt was growing. After finishing the apartment tour, I told Mansok, honey, I think we need to go to the embassy. Surprisingly, Mansok immediately agreed. Yes, let's verify first. The Korean embassy wasn't too far. At the civil affairs counter, we received a real estate contract verification procedure and checklist. The representative said, you should never sign a contract without verifying the local registry. Especially transferring money to an individual's account is very dangerous. My heart started beating rapidly. Leaving the embassy, I contacted Hai-rin. She met us at a nearby cafe. Is there anything I can help with? She asked cautiously. Could we look at the local registry website? I requested. Hai-rin opened her laptop and showed us the registry site. After entering the address, information in Cambodian appeared. Hai-rin translated. The owner of this building is not the company Mr. Choi Dong-wook mentioned. I asked her to capture this information. And I wrote down the name of the bank account holder in my notebook. Little did I know then that this name would become an important clue later. Back at the hotel, I talked with Mansok. He wore a serious expression for the first time. Have we been scammed? I held Mansok's hand. Nothing certain yet, but I don't think we can proceed further without verification. That night, we made a decision. We would return home the next day. Mansok said, our lifelong habit of cleaning floors, it means we need to look from the ground up, right? Not a step further without verification. The next morning, we informed Choi Dong-wook of our decision to return. He seemed flustered. Why so suddenly? All the documents will be ready tomorrow. We were firm. We booked a flight for that evening. On the way to the airport, a voice message came from Choi Dong-wook. If you come tomorrow, I'll show you all the originals. Please wait. But our decision was firm. Just before boarding the plane, Hai-rin came to the airport to meet us. Keep this contact information. You might need it later. She wrote down her personal number. And the contact of Sophia, the guest house owner. As I boarded the plane, my heart was heavy, but also clear. I had realized with certainty that I couldn't take one more step without verification. When we arrived at Incheon Airport, it was raining at night. The sound of raindrops tapping on the taxi window was like the ticking of a clock. Instead of going home, we headed to a small, one-room apartment agency in Bucheon. We signed a monthly rent contract for a small studio near Songnay Station. The room was small and worn. Only the red light of an electric heater welcomed us. Mansok sat by the window looking outside. 15 years of savings, just like that. I put my arm around Mansok's shoulders. It's not over yet. We'll gather evidence and get our money back. The next morning, I called my son Jaiho. I explained everything. Jaiho was angry. Why didn't you tell me first? I told you, nothing without on-site verification. We argued over the phone for quite a while. I could hear anger and disappointment in Jaiho's voice. But in the end, he said, all right, thank you for telling me now. I'll help. That made me tear up. After reconciling with my son, I began collecting evidence in earnest. First, I converted Choi Dong-wook's voice messages from Cambodia to text. I highlighted important parts with a fluorescent marker. Keywords like original, storage, individual, not corporation stood out. Second, I emailed Sophia, the guesthouse owner. I requested receipts for the period we stayed. Sophia kindly sent an English receipt. It detailed guide fees, vehicle costs, and more. I also contacted Hai Rin. She shared all the information she knew. In particular, she invited us to a group chat with other victims who had gone through the same experience. I called my subway colleague Kim Young-ya. She provided important information. I heard the CCTV at the Gasan office turns off during lunch hour. They say important people come in at that time. I wrote this information in my notebook. Little did I know it would become a crucial clue later. We went to the Songnay Dong Community Center. It was legal consultation day. The lawyer provided detailed guidance on the procedure for suspected fraud cases. Gather as much evidence as possible. Then submit a victim statement to the police station. Include transfer proof and contract copies. That evening, I drafted a victim statement at the police station. I attached transfer evidence, contract copies, and the voice message text. The police officer kindly pointed out what I had missed. Please describe the circumstances of the contract in detail. And if you have Mr. Choi Dong-wook's business card or company information, that would be helpful. On the way home, I got a call from Choi Dong-wook. I'll send you the original contract by courier tomorrow. There seems to be a misunderstanding, we are a legitimate business. His voice still exuded confidence. But now I could sense the lies hidden behind it. The next day, a package arrived. When I opened the envelope, there was just one sheet of paper with a seal. Was this the original he mentioned? I began to examine the paper closely. The angle of the seal, the ink smudges, the texture of the paper. Everything was strange, and most of all, the apartment address written on the contract was subtly different from where we had visited. Mansok sat beside me and looked at the paper together. Never seen anything like this in all our years of cleaning. That made me laugh. After a lifetime of cleaning floors together, we were now tracking down traces of lies. Evidence was starting to accumulate. It was time to take action. Early in the morning, I headed to a print shop with the contract we received by courier. The shop bell rang clearly as I entered. The printer man enlarged and printed the document I handed him. This is strange. The font of the seal impression is different. I had noticed the difference too. The seal on the promotional material and the seal I now received were subtly different. Looking at the enlargement, it was even more obvious. The letter spacing in the seal, the ink density, even the date format were different. Leaving the print shop, I met with Mansok. Together we examined the enlarged printouts. Mansok pointed to one part with his finger. Look here, this seal part seems to have been copied. What are the odds of a seal being stamped at exactly the same angle? It was true. Looking closely, there were signs that the seal had been stamped at the same angle. It was as if the same image had been copied and pasted. A trace of digital manipulation. Encouraged by this discovery, I contacted the victim group chat. We decided to file a joint complaint. Other victims had similar experiences. There was evidence that the same apartment had been sold exclusively to multiple people. We reviewed the photos Hai Rin had sent. That same apartment had been introduced to other investors in exactly the same way, even on the same day, at different times. Next was to check the entry records for the Gasan office. With Jaiho's help, we visited the security office of the office building. The security guard was wary at first, but helped us after we explained our situation. Yes, a man in a suit enters that office every day during lunch hour. It was strange because he only came when the CCTV was off. I recorded the security guard's testimony. Now we had evidence of Choi Dong-wook's behavior pattern. Mansok contacted his colleagues at Songnay Station to collect photos of business cards from the contract presentation day. When we checked the company registration number on the card, it wasn't a real registered company. We gathered all the evidence and headed to the police station. This time it was to submit an official complaint. I felt nervous as we arrived at the station, but Mansok held my hand tightly. Everything will be fine, just as we've lived diligently all our lives, we'll resolve this diligently too. We met the detective in charge. I presented the evidence I had prepared one by one. Voice messages, receipts, entry records, traces of seal forgery. I explained everything. This person approached multiple victims with the same method. There are at least 10 victims besides us. The detective nodded. You've prepared very meticulously. With evidence like this, the investigation will be much smoother. That afternoon, the police summoned Choi Dong-wook. We faced him as well. At first meeting, he still appeared confident, but as we showed the evidence, one by one, his expression changed. I'm a victim too. I was just the middleman. Choi Dong-wook continued, the truth is, my elderly mother is in intensive care. I needed money for surgery urgently. But I planned to pay back all the money. There were tears in his eyes. I felt my resolve waver momentarily. But thinking about our life savings of 300 million won, I couldn't easily sympathize. The detective said, we need to find the actual user of the named account. This case appears to be an organized crime, not a simple fraud. I opened my notebook. The name I had written down in Cambodia caught my eye. It was the name of the bank account holder. At that moment, it felt like all the puzzle pieces were falling into place. This name, it's the account holder, could they be an accomplice? The detective checked the name and widened his eyes. This person has been implicated in other cases as well. You've given us a good lead. On the way home, Mansok put his arm around my shoulders. That's my wife for you. Eyes that have cleaned floors all their lives can't be deceived. The comment made me smile, but it also brought tears to my eyes. The truth was slowly coming to light. When I opened my eyes in the morning, I could hear the sound of rain tapping on the window. The sight of raindrops flowing down the glass reminded me of our situation. Like scattered droplets gathering to flow downward, scattered clues were coming together into a single truth. Today I decided to check the bank transfer statement again. As I opened the document from the bank, an English word in the memo field caught my eye. It said, CHANNL. It was a misspelling of channel. I recorded this typo in my notebook. We headed to the police station. The detective in charge shared new information. We've investigated the account holder, Ms. Park reported. Related evidence is emerging. According to the testimony the police had secured, the same spelling error was in the Wi-Fi SSID of the Gasan office. It was named CHANNLOFFICE. I showed the memo field of the bank transfer statement. The typo is identical. It seems the same person set it up. The detective nodded. The person who set up this Wi-Fi is likely to be the accomplice. We checked the Wi-Fi installation agency, and the contractor matches the bank account holder. Puzzle pieces were fitting together one by one. Another important piece of information came from the victim group chat. One victim shared a recorded call with the accomplice. I told you I manage that account. The voice and tone in the recording were clear. With this evidence, the police applied for a search warrant. 2 days later, the police contacted us. Search and seizure had been conducted at the accomplice's home and office. They found contract templates and seal PNG files on the accomplice's laptop. We've secured definitive evidence. Both individuals are headed for detention investigation. We met Choi Dong-wook again at the police station. This time his expression was quite different. No longer confident, he looked defeated. I was wrong, but it was really because of my mother's hospital bills. I'm willing to repay all the money. I looked him straight in the eye. I understand your circumstances, but our retirement is our life. It was money we saved our entire lives. Mansok nodded beside me. Choi Dong-wook bowed his head. Seeing his shoulders tremble, it seemed he was truly remorseful. That evening, a decision was made to forward the case to the prosecution. And the provisional attachment procedure also began. The lawyer said there was a possibility of recovering some assets. The next day, I received a call from the detective in charge. We've picked up tracking signals from overseas accounts as well. There are traces of funds flowing to a local corporate account in Cambodia. This news gave us hope. We might not recover all the money, but there was a possibility of getting some back. And above all, the fact that the truth was being revealed was a comfort. Mansok took my hand. You did well, honey. Without you, this wouldn't have progressed so far. I smiled. We who had lived cleanly all our lives were also carrying out this process of finding justice cleanly. On the way home, the rain was stopping. Sunlight began to shine through the clouds. Just like our situation, light always finds its way through the darkness. Sitting in the one-room apartment, I looked out the window. The autumn rain was starting and stopping intermittently. The way sunlight shone through the raindrops resembled our situation. I pondered as I watched this interplay of darkness and light. What should we do now? Mansok spread a notebook on the table. We needed to make plans for the future. First was the issue of legal fees. Hiring a lawyer would cost a lot. But we couldn't afford it. How about going to the Legal Aid Corporation? I suggested. The next day, we visited the Legal Aid Corporation. The consultant was very helpful. Low-income individuals or seniors can receive free legal support. Please prepare the necessary documents. We received a list of required documents and prepared them diligently. Residence registration, income certificate, property certificate. We gathered everything meticulously. The provisional attachment application was also proceeding. We heard that the court had approved the attachment. Some of Choi Dong-wook and the accomplice's assets were frozen. There was a possibility of recovering part of the damages. We also had to address living expenses. The one-room monthly rent and living costs were burdensome. We consulted with the welfare department of the local government. You can apply for emergency welfare support and housing benefits. Given your current situation, you may be eligible. We filled out the application forms and submitted the necessary documents. A week later, we received a notice of emergency support decision. At least we no longer had to worry about immediate rent. The story of Choi Dong-wook's elderly mother's hospital bills still weighed on my mind. I wanted to confirm if he really had a sick mother. I asked the detective. Yes, the hospital bills were real. But some items were inflated. So his situation wasn't entirely false. But that didn't give him the right to take someone else's retirement funds. We also heard that the accomplice's vehicle and accounts were subject to forfeiture. The victims group began discussing distribution ratios. Everyone agreed that all victims should share equally. I created a overseas settlement checklist and shared it on YouTube. I hoped there would be no more victims like us. I also shared this story at the local senior center. Many seniors showed interest. Oh, Soon-ya, good thing there's someone like you. We wouldn't have known. Mansok started his own recovery process. He walked to Songnhae Station every morning. It seemed he was finding peace by walking the path he had cleaned for 15 years. If you look from the ground up, you won't slip. That's how we've lived our whole lives. Jaiho was a great help too. He came every weekend and created a budget app with us. We discussed how to make financial plans with the remaining money. Mom, Dad, if you manage it this way, you'll be okay for a while. I'll contribute a little each month. My heart swelled at his words. I felt the family had become stronger after reconciling. A month later, we received word from the court. Some compensation had been decided. It wasn't the full amount. But it looked like we could recover about 100 million out of the 300 million. It wasn't complete recovery, but it was a spark to restart our lives. That evening, I opened my notebook. On the first page was that name I had written in Cambodia, with a red circle. It was amazing how this small memo had become the starting point. For the entire investigation, Mansok put his arm around my shoulders. Honey, let's start again. This time more solidly. Stars began to appear outside the window. Even in darkness, light always exists. Morning dawned. Opening the window, fresh air flowed into the room. The sunlight shining between the curtains seemed to herald a new beginning. My eyes fell on the notebook lying on the bedside table. That notebook had been with me since the Cambodia trip. I opened the first page. There, with a red circle, was the name of the bank account holder. That I had first written down. Little did I know then that this small memo would become the thread of the entire investigation. What are you looking at so intently this early? Mansok came in with 2 cups of coffee. Look at this. Remember that name we first suspected? Mansok looked at the notebook and nodded. Yes, the one you wrote down in Cambodia. That was the beginning of everything. I smiled. We've spent our lives cleaning floors. The habit of not missing even small things shone through here. Mansok laughed and said, right? We've cleaned all our lives. Life also shines when you clean it. Those words touched my heart. Our way of living diligently. All our lives had ultimately become the strength to overcome this difficulty. I posted 5 investment check principles on the refrigerator. It was to ensure we never repeated the same mistake. On-site inspection, verify with your own eyes. Originals, check the original of all documents. Certification number verification, confirm certification facts. Verify corporate recipient, never send to personal accounts. Diversify investments, never put all assets in one place. Among the mail Jaiho brought was a letter from Choi Dong-wook. A brief apology, "I'm sorry," was accompanied by his mother's medical appointment schedule, so he hadn't told a complete lie. Humans have circumstances, but that doesn't erase responsibility. Good news came from the victims group chat. A joint compensation agreement had been reached. It would be divided equally among everyone. The amount wasn't large, but what mattered was that justice was being done. Autumn rain began to fall outside the one-room window. But now, the sound of rain wasn't frightening. Rather, it seemed to make the air in the room more solid. "Honey, the community center called today. They want you to give a lecture on fraud prevention." I was surprised at Mansuk's words. "Me? What kind of lecture?" "They said sharing our experience would be helpful. They invited you as the first lecturer." I hesitated at first but soon decided. If our experience could help others, that would be meaningful. The following week, I stood before about 20 seniors in the community center classroom. I was nervous but spoke sincerely. "I'm an ordinary person who cleaned subway stations all my life. I want to tell you how I almost lost 300 million won but found my way back." I could sense the seniors' eyes becoming more focused. My story wasn't just someone else's tale to them. As I was leaving after the lecture, an elderly woman held my hand tightly. "Thank you, Soon-ya. I was getting similar proposals, but now I'll definitely reject them." My heart swelled at those words. It was comforting to know our experience had helped someone. Walking home with Mansuk, hand in hand, we passed in front of Songnay Station. Suddenly, I recalled the day we first started working here 15 years ago. "Honey, remember? When we first met here?" Mansuk smiled and nodded. "Yes. You were always meticulous. You even cleaned spots I missed. That habit ended up saving us." Back home, we turned on the TV. The news was broadcasting a warning about overseas investment scams. Similar cases to ours were continuing to occur. An expert being interviewed on camera said, "Never transfer money without verification. It's most important to see, hear, and verify directly." I nodded at those words. Verification is something we do with our own hands. Rain began to fall again outside the window. The sound of rain overlapped with that early rain sound at Songnay Station. I remembered that path we first walked 15 years ago. The floor we cleaned with mops every morning. Mansuk put his arm around my shoulders. "What will you do now?" "Just live as ourselves, I guess? One small thing at a time, with certainty." Mansuk smiled. "Right. Because we've cleaned from the ground up." I opened the notebook again. That name on the first page, and the lesson I wrote on the last page. "Hope without verification is fraud. Verified hope is a path." That night, before falling asleep, I thought. For us who had lived cleaning floors all our lives, the saying, "look from the ground up," wasn't just advice. It was our life itself, and ultimately the wisdom that saved us. That saying, "look from the ground up," I never knew it would come back this way. Everyone, how did Sun Ja's story resonate with you? She was deceived by the world she trusted. Yet she found the courage to stand again. When we take time to check, to learn, and to begin anew, hope always finds its way back. I hope you, too, never give up and keep walking your path with strength. If this story touched you or brought up your own thoughts, please share them in the comments. Your likes and subscriptions mean more than words can say. May this story bring courage and comfort to someone who needs it. And I truly wish you a warm and healthy day ahead.